Hey guys, welcome back to the wonderful world of digestion. Today we're going to jump into a little bit of review. Uh, on Friday, we are going to have what amounts to a test these days. All right, some test questions designed for a Google form that you only get one chance with. All right, so take your time, open up your notes, get whatever you got. I don't know what questions are going to be yet because I didn't make it yet, but it will be one chance. So come prepared. I do know that you are going to have some labeling. So make sure you know what the organs are and where they are. All right. We're actually going to get a bit of that today too. But first, today we are going to get a little bit of reading in. That's right. Turns out those old Bio 1 textbooks have an anatomy section in the back. So that's what we're going to jump into. The section on digestion. After that, going to be one of those worksheets that come along with that textbook that I will adapt for internet use. All right, so let's jump into this. Section 38-2, the process of digestion. Like always, if you are sick of hearing my voice, these PDFs will be available for you to read on your own in Google Classroom. But for now, let's read together. Food presents every animal with at least two challenges. The first is how to obtain it. Once an animal has caught, gathered, or engulfed its food, it faces a new challenge: how to break that food down into small molecules that can be passed to the cells that need them. This is the job of the digestive system. As food passes through the digestive system, it gets disassembled, distributing its nutrient value to the body along the way. The human digestive system, like those of the chordates, is built around an alimentary canal, a one-way tube that passes through the body. Key term here is key information. The digestive system includes the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. Several major accessory structures, including the salivary glands, the pancreas, and the liver, add secretions to the digestive system. That is everything we just got done talking about in the notes, so that should not be new to you. All right, the mouth. As you take a forkful of food into your mouth, the work of the digestive system begins. The teeth tear and crush the moistened food into a fine paste until it's ready to be swallowed. Chewing begins the process of mechanical digestion, the physical breakdown of large pieces of food into smaller pieces. Remember that, guys, it's going to come up. Mechanical digestion, like movement. You are moving your teeth to crush things. But there is a great deal more to it than that. As you chew your food, digestive enzymes begin to break down molecules into smaller molecules. This process is called chemical digestion. During chemical digestion, large food molecules are broken down to smaller food molecules. Let me reword that for better understanding. Mechanical digestion is when you physically break something down. If you eat a banana, you crush it down into smaller pieces of banana. Chemical digestion takes those banana molecules and rips them apart until it's no longer a banana anymore. So mechanical digestion, you still have a banana. Chemical digestion, no longer a banana. The function of each organ of the digestive system is to help convert food into simpler molecules that can be absorbed and used by the cells in the body. Teeth. The teeth shown in figure 38-9 right here are anchored to the bones of the jaw. The surface of the teeth, which are much tougher than ordinary bone, are protected by a coating of mineralized enamel. The teeth do much of the mechanical work of digestion by cutting, tearing, and crushing food into smaller fragments. Next page, just showing a drawing of the body here. I'm going to leave this here. You guys want to look at it, take a screen capture, because I said you will be doing some labeling and this will be helpful to you. All right, make that bigger here. There we go. Now it's a good time for a screenshot. All right, moving on. Saliva. As the teeth cut and grind the food, the salivary glands secrete saliva, which help to moisten the food and make it easier to chew. all the way up here, guys, in the picture. Salivary gland in the cheek, along the jawline, and just under the tongue. And then on the other side of the face, cheek and jawline as well. All right, that's actually 5 different salivary glands, but 3 with 3 names in this picture. The release of saliva is under the control of the nervous system and can be triggered by the scent of food, especially when you're hungry. That's right, guys, as I said in the notes, you smell good food and you start salivating, your mouth waters. Saliva not only helps ease the passage of food through the digestive system, it begins the process of chemical digestion. Saliva contains an enzyme called amylase that breaks chemical bonds between the sugar monomers and starches. If you chew on a starchy food like crackers long enough, it will begin to taste sweet. This sweet taste is a sign that sugar has been released from the starch by the action of amylase. Saliva also contains lysozyme, an enzyme that fights infection by digesting the cell walls of many bacteria that may enter the mouth with food. Okay? That's one of the reasons why you don't get sick when you eat food. If that food has bacteria on it, the amylase kills the bacteria. The esophagus. The combined action of the tongue and throat muscles push the chewed clump of food called a bolus down the throat. Recall that a flap of connective tissue called the epiglottis closes over the opening to the trachea as you swallow. This action prevents food from clogging the air passage to the lungs. All right, we talked all about that epiglottis in the lungs chapter. We've mentioned it again in this chapter, and it stops you from choking. From the throat, the bolus passes through the esophagus, or food tube, into the stomach. You might think that gravity draws the food down through the esophagus, but that is not correct. You are able to swallow food just fine while lying down or standing on your head. Astronauts are even able to swallow food in the weightless environment of space. The reason food travels through the esophagus into the stomach is that it is moved along by contractions of smooth muscle surrounding the esophagus. Known as peristalsis, these contractions squeeze food through 25-centimeter length of esophagus into the stomach. That was about 9.8 inches, I believe. Peristalsis is illustrated in figure 38-11. So over here, you see it squeezing the food down as if it was like a tube of toothpaste, squeezing the toothpaste down. Right? I showed you very good videos of that in your notes. Please go back and check that out if you don't remember. A thick ring of muscle called the cardiac sphincter closes the esophagus after the food has passed into the stomach and prevents the contents of the stomach from moving back up into the esophagus. Have you ever suffered from heartburn? Heartburn is a painful burning sensation that feels as if it's coming from the center of the chest, just above the stomach. The sensation is usually caused by stomach acid that moves past the cardiac sphincter and splashes against the lining of the esophagus. Overeating or an excess of caffeinated drinks can cause the cardiac sphincter muscle to open, allowing the stomach acid to back up into the esophagus. So this opening right here, here's your esophagus, here's your stomach, and once this bolus goes through, this doorway called the cardiac sphincter should shut. Let me zoom in here. Oh, as I zoom, it's going to let me get. Oh, here we go. So this should shut. If you overeat, this can open. If you overcaffeinate, this could open. And stomach acid can splash up here where you don't have any protection. That's heartburn. It actually has nothing to do with your heart. All right, now that that bolus goes into the stomach, let's read about the stomach. Food from the esophagus empties into a large muscular sac called the stomach. The size of the stomach enables you to eat a few large meals a day, rather than having to nibble all the time. The stomach continues the mechanical digestion of food. Contractions of its smooth muscle thoroughly churn and mix the food you swallow. Remember, churn is that muscle action where it squeezes the food around and kneads it so that all the acid gets in between all the nooks and crannies. Chemical digestion. The lining of the stomach contains millions of microscopic gastric glands that release a number of substances into the stomach. Remember we talked about glands in the notes? Glands are the clump of cells all going through protein synthesis, making chemicals. Some of these glands produce mucus, a fluid that lubricates and protects the stomach wall. Other glands produce hydrochloric acid, which makes the contents of the stomach very acidic. The acid activates an enzyme called pepsin, which is secreted by a third set of glands. Pepsin works best under acidic conditions present in the stomach. The combination of pepsin and hydrochloric acid begins the complex process of protein digestion. Pepsin breaks the proteins into smaller polypeptide fragments. Some other enzymes that help in digestion are shown in 38-12, which is the next page. All right, so looking at 38-12, digestive enzymes break down foods to make nutrients available to the body. All right. So the mouth has that amylase in the saliva, or salivary amylase, breaks down starch into disaccharides. Let's use words that we learned in class in Bio 1, carbohydrates. It breaks down carbohydrates. In your stomach, you have pepsin, which breaks down proteins. Oh man, those words keep coming back from Bio 1. In the small intestine, we didn't get there in this reading, but there's more amylase that break down the carbohydrates. Something called trypsin, which breaks down even more proteins, and lipase, kind of sounds like lipids, breaks down fat. So your small intestine is going to do a great job breaking everything else down, all the stuff. All that is coming from liquids from the pancreas. We will get there. And then also in your small intestine, but not having to do with the pancreas, maltase, sucrase, and lactase breaks down remaining disaccharides into monosaccharides. Basically, it helps you break down certain sugars. Lactase, if you are lactose intolerant, it means you do not actually make lactase, right? In fact, originally only babies made lactase because it helped them break down the lactose in their mother's milk. You're supposed to grow out of that. We have evolved to keep it, unless you're lactose intolerant. And then peptidase breaks down dipeptides into amino acids. So that's the final step. Your stomach breaks down big proteins into smaller proteins, and then your small intestine breaks those small proteins into the amino acids. Bio 1, remember? All right, going back to the reading. Back into your stomach. Ulcers. The powerful acids released into the stomach sometimes damage the organ's own lining, producing a hole in the stomach wall known as a peptic ulcer. In your notes, I also refer to it as a gastric ulcer. It's the same thing. For years, physicians assumed that the primary cause of ulcers was too much stomach acid. They prescribed drugs that suppressed the acid production and recommended bland, easy-to-digest diets. Scientists have discovered that peptic ulcers are usually caused by the bacterium Helicobacter pylori. This is the bacteria you did an assignment on recently. All right, the case study. Doctors around the world now know that many peptic ulcers are caused by an infectious disease that can be cured. Thanks to powerful antibiotics, cure rates for peptic ulcers are as high as 90%. All right. So we just read up on chemical digestion, where all of these chemicals, these enzymes, are used to rip these molecules apart into something brand new. Mechanical digestion is different. As digestion proceeds, stomach muscles contract to churn and mix stomach fluids and food, gradually producing a mixture known as chyme. After an hour or two, the pyloric valve, which is located between the stomach and the small intestine, open, and the chyme begins to flow into the small intestine. Right? So chemical breakdown, you are ripping apart molecules. Mechanical digestion, you're just physically crushing things and mixing things together. All right. At this point, we should be in the small intestine, but the small intestine is going to use a bunch of chemicals that come from what we call accessory organs. So let's read up on those accessory organs first, the pancreas and the liver. As chyme is pushed through the pyloric valve, it enters the duodenum. You remember in the notes, I pronounced it the duodenum. Both words are technically correct pronunciations. All right, go with the one you choose that you like. The duodenum, or as I say, duodenum, is the first of three parts of the small intestine. The small intestine is the location where most of the chemical digestion takes place. As chyme enters the duodenum from the stomach, it mixes with enzymes and digestive fluids from the pancreas, the liver, and even the lining of the duodenum itself. The pancreas and liver are shown in figure 38-13. This big red thing is the liver, and this yellow one here is the pancreas. They are going to release chemicals that go into the small intestine and help you digest food. This green thing, you remember the notes, is the gallbladder. The chemicals that the liver makes get stored here so that we can have a good supply of it when we're ready. The pancreas just consistently drips in when you need it. Just below the stomach is the pancreas, that yellow thing I just showed you. The pancreas is a gland that serves three important functions. One function is to produce hormones that regulate blood sugar levels. Within the digestive system, the pancreas plays two key roles. It produces enzymes that break down carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. Remember, those are the four macromolecules you learned in Bio 1. You get those from the food you eat. Right? The pancreas also produces sodium bicarbonate, a base that neutralizes stomach acid so that these enzymes can be effective. Why is the neutralization necessary? Stomach acid can change the shape of protein molecules, and enzymes are proteins. If the shape of the enzyme's active site does not match the shape of the substrate, the enzyme will not be effective. Right. Put that into easier to understand terms. If you warp the shape of the proteins, if you warp the shape of the enzymes, they can't do their job. Right. Acid will mess up the proteins. Acid will mess up the enzymes. We don't want that to happen. So we have a base that neutralizes the acid. Assisting the pancreas is the liver, a large organ located just above the stomach. The liver produces bile, a fluid loaded with lipids and salts. Bile acts like a detergent, dissolving and dispersing the droplets of fat found in fatty foods. This action makes it possible for enzymes to reach the fat molecules and break them down. Bile is stored in a small pouch-like organ called the gallbladder. All right, small intestine. Zoom in on this picture really quick, and you will notice that your small intestine is shaped like a tube. All right, we all those accessory organs we just got done reading about, they drop all their chemicals into here. Right, this is the next step after the stomach. So the stomach puts all the chyme in here, and then your accessory organs put all the chemicals in here, and they get all mixed together. But zoom in, and we're going to read up on this. The inside wall of the small intestine. It's looking at this little square. Let me zoom in here. All right, this square right here zoomed in looks like this close up. This is called a villi. This is important because the small intestine absorbs all the nutrients. It gets soaked into the lining and then into your bloodstream. Right? This is what the lining looks like. It sticks out, so you got more surface area, so you get more absorption. And then right here, see where my mouse is spinning around? There's another box to zoom in. This thing is called a microvilli. Right? The villi is covered in a whole bunch of smaller microvilli, where you're going to have your extra blood vessels and things like that. You're going to see a bunch more absorption. The more microvilli you have, again, the more surface area and the more absorption you get. And inside the villi is your blood vessels where all the nutrients go and then spread around your body. All right, so small intestine reading. The duodenum, or duodenum if you choose, is much shorter than the remaining parts of the small intestine, the jejunum and the ileum, which are about 3 meters long. By the time chyme enters these parts of the small intestine, much of the chemical digestion has been completed. The chyme is now a rich mixture of medium and small nutrient molecules. The small intestine is especially adapted to absorb nutrients. The folded surfaces of the small intestine are covered with projections called villi. These things. The villi are illustrated in 38-14. I just showed you that. The surface of the cells of the villi are covered with thousands of finger-like projections known as microvilli. These little wobbly things on the villi. These folds and projections mean that the small intestine has an enormous surface area available to absorb nutrient molecules. Slow, wave-like contractions of smooth muscle move the chyme along the surface. Nutrient molecules are rapidly absorbed into the cells lining the small intestine. Most of the products of carbohydrate and protein digestion are absorbed into the capillaries in the villi. That's important. Those blood vessels are in the villi, not the microvilli. You are looking at a zoomed in villi. Uh, Molecules of undigested fat and some fatty acids are absorbed by lymph vessels called lacteals, which is the green thing. And finally, the large intestine. By the time food leaves the small intestine, it is basically nutrient free. The complex organic molecules have been digested and absorbed, leaving only water, cellulose, and other undigestible substances behind. And basically, your large intestine gets all of the poop and water. Your large intestine only wants the water. The poop gets left behind. Well, at this point, we're still calling it chyme, all right, because the poopy water mixture still. Right? The chyme enters the large intestine, also known as the colon. The primary job of the large intestine is to remove water from the undigested material that is left. The large intestine is shown in figure 38-15. So this. Just below the entry to the colon is a small organ called the appendix. Not shown in this picture apparently, but you may, if you look closely and squint your eyes, you might be able to see a piece sticking out right here, not really well colored in. That's the appendix, teeny tiny little thing there. Lost where I was. Called the appendix. Here you go. Some animals have appendixes in which cellulose is digested by bacteria. In humans, the appendix appears to do little to promote digestion. The only time people pay attention to the appendix is when it becomes inflamed, causing appendicitis. The remedy for acute appendicitis is to surgically remove the infected organ as quickly as possible. Okay. Appendicitis is basically, we don't use this organ anymore, and your body suddenly realized, hey, I should get rid of this, and your body starts rejecting it. Unfortunately, it's attached to you, so that could become deadly, so the doctors need to remove it. That's called appendicitis, and removing it is called an appendectomy. Here we go. Water is moved quickly across the large intestine wall. Rich colonies of bacteria grow on the undigested material left in the colon. These intestinal bacteria help the digestive process. Some of the bacteria produce compounds that the body can use, such as vitamin K. The concentrated, basically, guys, there's good bacteria that helps you break down the stuff that you couldn't break down. The concentrated waste material that remains after the water has been removed passes through the rectum and is eliminated from the body. When something happens that interferes with the removal of the water by the large intestine, you usually become aware of it right away. The condition that is produced is known as diarrhea. The loss of salts and water due to diarrhea can be life-threatening, especially for an infant. Remember, diarrhea is chyme. You did not remove water from the chyme, so it's when you have diarrhea, you get rid of everything, including that water that you need. So you get dehydrated because you didn't get it. Diarrhea resulting from bacterial infections and contaminated drinking water is the leading cause of childhood death in many developing countries around the world. If you get sick, you can get diarrhea, you can get dehydrated, and this is worse the younger you are. All right. We are not doing this. Do not do the 38-2 session assessment. No, instead, we are going to work on something else. All right. This is a worksheet that comes along with the textbooks. I'm going to adapt this so that it works better on the internet. So it won't look exactly like this when you get it, but by the time you do, it should be on Google Classroom waiting for you. So go back to the classroom and find this assignment. Good luck, guys.